Yeah, they've talked about it for years. I mean, they go back almost 20 years to when I was in the legislature. People bring out proposals about that. And I think it's reasonable to have, reasonable timeline expectations. So it's during the normally scheduled elections and things of that nature. But my guess is you're probably going to have a dramatic reduction in the number of referendum questions if our budget goes through the way that it is, because not all, some are just capital, but some of the other referendum questions the last few years have been related to ongoing operations. If they see this large of an increase, most school districts aren't going to need that going forward.
And I know that there's been a proposal to limit or eliminate Act 32 and Act 28. Why?
Again, for some of it, the things that lawmakers are have to let them talk about why they're introducing specific bills out there. But overall, with this budget, what we tried to do is put historic amounts in there. We also looked at things, a couple years ago we changed the number of days that required. We're now proposing removing the requirement, the mandate from Madison about the number of hours. And the idea with that is I want local school boards to make that determination. I trust them and parents. In some cases, they may choose to have far more than what the state's proposed or mandated in the past. But really, it should be a determination made at the local level.
Governor Walker, with your re-election a few years ago and then the recent election of Tony Evers for the state superintendent position, two different schools of thought. Is that an example of just the two schools of thought can coexist?
Well, I mean, the irony is right now, if you look at our budget proposal, it matches what Dr. Evers proposed. So it's exactly the same amount, $200 per pupil the first year, $204 on top of that the second year. Almost all the things he put in for rural schools, or sparsity and others. So in that regard, some people think politically they assume Dr. Evers is one way or the other, but Tony and I have worked well together, and I think he was one of the biggest fans when we introduced our budget. So what we've tried to do is point out that with such a sizable reform dividend, now's the time to reinvest that in things that are priorities. And for us, it's not just K through 12, it's the whole idea of building a strong workforce as well as student success. Several months there were rumors that at least the Assembly might go to a zero budget and start with their own as opposed to start from our foundation of education spending. The fact that they didn't do that they kept our budget to begin with, doesn't mean they won't make changes, but that's a huge move. I know the Wisconsin Association of School Boards a couple weeks ago put out an alert. They were worried they'd go to zero, meaning they probably end up putting less in. The fact that they didn't, I think, is a strong sign. The only area they didn't go along with is the transportation budget, and my guess is they'll get pretty close. We put as well historic amounts into local road aids. We put historic amounts into state highway rehab. I was just talking with Representative Trammell, for example, about 61. Here's a good example. Got to be a whole lot more projects like that going forward. What we're not doing in our budget proposal is putting tens of millions of dollars more into walking projects. They were important in the past, and they'll be wrapped up in this budget, but really we tried to put it more into what we heard from local officials and from just voters and constituents was fix our local roads, fix our bridges, fix our potholes, and our budget does that, and I hope they'll get issue. We started last June. I contacted under President Obama the U.S. Trade Representative and Secretary of Agriculture, who's actually now, that Secretary of Agriculture works for a trade association and helping us now advocate for changing Canadian policy. But whether it was under President Obama, we started the deal almost a year ago, to now under this current president. It's really a trade practice. That's why we reached out not only to the Ag Secretary, but Secretary of Commerce, and particularly the U.S. Trade Representative. And it would be a great opportunity. And the President's talked a lot about NAFTA. We're used to the discussions about Mexico, but Canada's just as much of a partner in that. And we forewarned this for more than a year. And so this didn't just sneak up on anybody. We pointed out that it started out in Ontario, but it's really spread across Canada. We want good relations with them. They're our #1 trading partner, but we want it to be fair. And this example is a prime area where we think the trade, if it's upheld to the standard that was expected, they enforce it, particularly through the World Trade Organization, we think that would reverse course. Whether or not they can do it by May 1st, this is one of those rare issues that brings parties together. I and every member of our congressional delegation, Republican, Democrat, alike, signed off on a letter to our federal leaders to try and draw attention. And I'll bring it up tomorrow when I see the president.
What do you make of the fact that the 83 policy from the budget proposal?
I think that just as a practice, they took that out. I would imagine a good number of those will be put back in. Others may be taken and introduced as individual bills. So I think the ideas will go forward. It's just a question of what format. But I'll give you a good example. So intact in the budget is our tuition freeze and ultimate cut tuition to the University of Wisconsin. Out of the budget, considered policy, is our language that says that students at the University of Wisconsin don't have to, they can opt out of what are called allocable fees, fees that are part of their direct education. To me, I think it's a pretty compelling argument that if tuition is a part of the budget, fees should be a part of the budget. But the way they technically define that, one is viewed as policy, one is viewed as not. So I think in areas where there's a logical connection, even if they're technically viewed as policy, where it does have a budget implication, those will probably go back in. For a handful of the others, they'll just get brought up in separate bills, and I assume they'll pass those.